Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tim's News Explosion on this Monday, the 6th of May, 2024. We are live on the Wilms Front YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble channels. Hello to everyone in the live chat, Linda Hunter and Peak Aussie Man, who have expressed that they're quite tired already. I'll try to keep you all awake tonight with quick news bursts here. It is 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where tomorrow we have the state budget. Sorry, I mean budget. I call it a fudget because government budgets, they're all about fudging the figures to hide total government spending, or what a lot of us will call waste. And Victoria's Treasurer, Tim Pallas, aka Uncle Fester, will be doing plenty of fudging tomorrow in an attempt to rein in Victoria's debt, which is predicted to swell to 178 billion by 2026-27. He may have run out of things to tax because he's increased land taxes, he's expanded things like payroll tax to GPs. So the only other option is to cut spending, which of course this government won't curtail their massive infrastructure projects, though it may sort of defer spending. They're not putting extra money towards the Melbourne Airport rail link, but it's full steam ahead on the suburban rail loop. They won't cut the Aboriginal projects such as, well, the First Peoples Assembly and the Yuruk Oral Commission. There's plenty of fat in the Aboriginal gravy train superstructure, but will cut things such as health, which supposedly Labor always says is one of their strengths. So this was an article that appeared in The Age a month and a half ago, talking about the dire situations Victorian hospitals are in, that they need major funding injections of up to 3 weeks worth of operations. So they're only actually working with 14-day cash supplies. So remember at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, Dan Andrews said that he was investing, was at 1.3 billion on 4,000 ICU beds. That never happened. Now that, well, it seems that according to the Victorian government, COVID is definitely over. And so it is ending a lot of, well, they said temporary programs. And so they're cutting things such as preventative health, which is supposed to save you on health expenses down the road. And also stripping funding from training as well. So when they're not looking, when it's not in the headlines, governments, when they're strapped for cash, they cut programs that are actually used by people, not actually trim the fat. And last year, when domestic violence wasn't in the headlines like it used to be, I think this was just before Dan Andrews resigned, slash a quarter of the jobs at the Family Safety Victoria. So 25% of the workforce, which was set up to implement the 2016 Royal Commission into family violence. And so this is what in the past week, with all of this the discussion about the need for more domestic violence funding for workers and programs. The federal government, they promised 500 extra domestic violence workers. They've only delivered 30. So the politicians, of course, particularly the leftist politicians, so they believe that they're the only ones who can authentically deliver for women. So this was when domestic violence wasn't in the spotlight. When it's not in the spotlight, then the government brings down the spending axe, slashes spending. Though, in my opinion, as a libertarian, that there is so much other fat that, well, I agree with Javier Miller. You need to take a chainsaw rather than just a meat cleaver slash to government spending. Senator Slay says, "Where I'm going to shoot my heroin now." Well, yes, that's another thing. The Allen government is not going to proceed with the second heroin injecting room, or should I say, safe drug injecting room in the Melbourne CBD, because they're getting too much pushback from local CBD businesses, and there's local government elections coming up in October this year. Sally Cap is not seeking re-election, and probably a Labor, you would say, apologist simp on Sky News, Nicholas Rees, the Deputy Lord Mayor, is probably wanting to run for mayor, and Labor would not want to do anything that would that annoy CBD people, traders and voters in the CBD. Wolfish Naturalist says, when will they talk about non-white violence against white women as white violence against white women? Balsef was not an outlier. Well, we're going to talk about that on this program, but we've certainly got to cover all of the big talk from the Prime Minister and the Premiers and Chief Ministers, the emergency National Cabinet meeting last Wednesday to tackle, it's sometimes called domestic violence or gendered violence. And so this was the press release that was put out by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and the headline is Tackling Online Harm. So even though things such as bail reform were discussed, of course, the solution is more online censorship. And so it says, to build on our prevention efforts, the Albanese government will introduce a suite of online measures to address easy access to pornography for children. Nobody would disagree with that unless you're a groomer or a pedophile. And young people, and tackle extreme online misogyny. That's one of these loaded terms. What is this extreme online misogyny? Whenever I hear that, it's always code word for Andrew Tate. It's all Andrew Tate's fault. Now, I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate or a defender of him, but he's an all too convenient boogeyman that it's all his fault that all of these young men have disrespect for women. What's the big headline today about these boys at Yarra Valley Grammar School who've been suspended in year 11 because they had on social media a chart ranking the girls in their year levels from wifey to cuties to mid, and what has got the headlines, the sensational headlines, is that down the bottom they had the classification was unrapeable, which of course, well, has really got all of the media's attention. The principals suspended the boys, and notified the parents. I think if those boys had chosen the word unfuckable rather than unrapeable, there might not have been this frenzy. But the mainstream media, they always love love stories about private schoolboys behaving badly, particularly towards women. Maybe Louise Milligan is she's maybe thinking this will make a great Four Corners story, because that's her big. When she's not reporting on pedophile priests, it's about toxic cultures within elite private schools. So I saw Jacqueline Felgate, the 3AW afternoons presenter who nobody's listening to, called for them to be expelled. Why don't we just give them the death penalty while we're at it here? I mean, I don't think what these boys did was very silly, but they shouldn't be cancelled, have their lives ruined at such a young age. Apparently, the police have been called in. I'm not sure what offence they have committed, but I'm sure that if there's not an offence that can be used against them, one will be created. So going back to extreme online misogyny, which is fueling harmful attitudes towards women. The Albanese government will provide resources to conduct a pilot of age assurance technology to protect children from harmful content like pornography and other age-restricted services online. So this new pilot will be funded in the May budget. The federal budget is next Tuesday. So this pilot will be available age assurance products to protect children from online harm, to test their efficiency in relation to privacy and security. The outcomes will inform the existing work of Australia's e-safety commissioner under the Online Safety Act. There we go again, including through the development of industry codes or standards to reduce children's exposure to age inappropriate material. The Albanese government will introduce legislation to ban the creation of a non-consensual distribution of deep fakes pornography. Digitally created and altered sexually explicit material is a damaging form of abuse against women and girls that can inflict deep harm on victims. The reforms make it clear that creating and sharing explicit material without consent using technology like artificial intelligence is subject to serious criminal penalties. In addition, a new phase of the successful Stop It at the Start campaign will launch in mid-June and run until May next year. This new phase will particularly include a counter-influencing campaign in online spaces where violent misogynistic content thrives, directly challenge the material in the spaces it's being viewed. Now, some people have said, are they going to advertise on these extreme misogynistic influencers channels, actually like giving them money, like like giving them ad revenue to put ads to counter them? So this campaign is intended to counter the corrosive influence of online content targeted at young adults that condones violence against women. It will raise awareness about the proliferation of misogynistic influences of content and encourage conversations within families about the damaging impact on material. And going down here, in response to these concerns, the government is undertaking a long overdue classification reforms with states and territories, which will examine options to reduce exposure to violent pornography, informed by engagement with experts, available evidence about harms. What's violent pornography? I mean, the only thing that I can think of is BDSM, which, well, it's supposed to be based on consent, but if young children, young people are exposed to it with not understanding the context, I mean, their minds can be warped to think that that's what all women want, which is not true. But I'll go to the e-safety commissioner's roadmap to age verification, and going up to a violent pornography is actually already illegal in Australia. So I'm not sure if any of you knew this, but fetish porn is actually banned in Australia, yet it pervades online. So this includes body piercing, applications of substances such as candle wax, golden showers, bondage, spanking, or fisting. I'm not going to explain those terms to you, because I don't want to get too graphic myself here. And now, the e-safety commissioner's roadmap here talks about, well, wanting to maintain the privacy of adults who want to view pornographic material, because, well, if there's an age verification database of what names, then they'd be worried about an adversary hacking this and exposing, well, maybe there's a whole bunch of politicians who who are accessing online pornography and would be quite embarrassed by it. So the e-safety commissioner recommends age assurance technology and the use of digital tokens. So this is called double-blind tokenized approach. So this is that is reusable through digital wallets. So apparently the tokens generated by your digital wallet, which is probably attached to your digital ID, but apparently the token you use is not traceable to your digital ID. So yes, we've absolutely got to protect the privacy of it's very important to the e-safety commissioner and probably the Australian government that it's not traceable to anybody who is accessing a online pornography, because that could be, well, embarrassing to, well, politicians and other people. So Andy Notch says we need Marg in the chat to explain the perverted sex terms, so we don't know what they mean, but she sure does. Pico says only missionary allowed in Australia. So just regular sex porn is allowed in Australia under the X18. So, but as I've said before, I mean, this supposedly illegal fetish porn pervades the internet and even Twitter X as well. I mean, remember there was that Spanish politician who had to resign, who was eating his own feces. I mean, you could view that on Twitter X, despite that clearly being a gross fetish that'd be illegal in Australia. Now, of course, what we hear from our politicians these days is that domestic violence it starts with disrespect for women, and now a prominent media personality who decided to counter the established narrative about, well, telling a sexist joke leads to domestic violence was Waleed Ali. And the lefty feminists and male feminists, they are absolutely pissed at Waleed. He said that this is a column that he'd been deciding not to ride for a decade. And he quotes Malcolm Turnbull: disrespecting women does not always result in violence against women, but all violence against women begins with disrespecting women. So Waleed says, I just don't think that's correct. And so he says that in his academic work, research overwhelmingly identifies factors like humiliation, shame, and guilt as motivating drivers, not lack of respect. The literature when the literature mentions respect at all, it isn't about the perpetrator disrespecting the victim. It's about the perpetrator feeling someone has disrespected them. And he talks about here, going further down here, the Nordic paradox, where Scandinavian countries are widely regarded to have the most gender equal societies in the world, also report some of the highest rates of sexual assault and gendered violence across the European Union. The frequent response is that they're better at recognizing and reporting sexual violence. Well, that may be true. It's not clear enough in the data. And he says, similarly, if gender disrespect was the fundamental engine of domestic violence, we'd expect to see much lower levels of it in same-sex relationships, but we don't. Current Australian statistics show rates of domestic violence are similar or slightly higher in same-sex relationships compared to heterosexual relationships. And because Waleed Ali is a Muslim, he says that it's saying that it's up to the good men to set the bad men straight is as silly as saying that it's up to the good Muslims to set the bad Muslims straight. Muslims need to start challenging radical Islam. So, I mean, I'm just saying that that's the parallel that Waleed himself draws. And so it gets later on into the article and references a article from the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, earlier in the week, pointing to the things we never wanted to mention. Recent white papers with lots of collections to violence, among them alcohol, gambling, and pornography, and abusive and neglectful childhood environments. And this was sort of like the whole looking at the actual, because I mentioned last week that Mark Latham was pilloried for saying that socioeconomic disadvantage is a driver in domestic violence. And obviously, there is a lot of domestic violence which is financial driven as well. So this article talks about how all of the programs which are about cultural change haven't worked over the ones that, you know, men need to step up and speak out. They haven't worked over the past 10 years, and says that we need to focus on perpetrators and on prevention. This is real hard work and demands a real cultural change. And so talks about going further down here, like obviously gambling causes financial hardship. And I would sort of say that because it talks about domestic violence hotline spike on nights of football grand final, and we know that alcohol is the mix there, but sin taxes aren't the answer, because if you make alcohol and cigarettes more expensive, that means that there's going to be more domestic strain, because the person's just going to keep buying cigarettes and alcohol, but it's going to drain the family budget. So certainly that's not a solution either. Andy says, wow, Waleed Ali is starting to be like Andrew Bolt. He'll be on Sky News soon. Yeah, he's become much more measured since 10 years ago, Waleed Ali, when he used to do those lefty monologues on the project. And what was the headline? That Waleed Ali smashed it. It was sort of like the similar of how Ben Shapiro destroyed somebody. I remember there was a meme that Waleed Ali drank a milkshake and he smashed it. Dylan Browning says strapedectomy is a well-known lesbian disease, hence why I never became one. I haven't heard of that disease there. Eric says Waleed Ali always virtue signals. He doesn't believe what he spouts. He's a good Muslim. His wife, Susan Carland, is a white convert to Islam. So she wrote a book on Islamic feminism, Fighting Islam. So Waleed was actually, his ethnicity is Egyptian, but he was born in Australia. Now, the terrorist teenager who was shot dead by Western Australian police over on Saturday night was actually a Caucasian convert. He converted to Islam and had been on a government-funded anti-extremism program since he was 14 years old, which clearly didn't work. So he had a complex history of mental health issues. Now, the weekly teenager who stabbed Bishop Mamari Emanuel, allegedly, we have to say, causing him to lose sight in one eye. His parents were on ABC 7:30 last week with Sean Rubenstein Dunlop, where the mother said, "Oh, he just has anger issues." So this teenager, he stabbed a person coming out of a 24-hour gym and with a large kitchen knife. And then when police arrived, had been chasing and lunging at them. And that's they tried to taser him twice. It didn't work. And so then the police officer had to use lethal force. So some would say that's instant justice. So police were alerted to the boy's violent plans by concerned members of the Muslim community had called 000 after receiving a text from the teen. Oh, well, it was good of them to do that, unlike up in Sydney, where even though the Wakeley teenager had been kicked out of a Muslim mosque and community center for being too radical, they never alerted the authorities. So his final message, this teenager: brothers, please forgive me for any time I have wronged you. I am going in the path of jihad tonight for the sake of Allah Awazi. I'm a soldier of the Mujahideen of Al Qaeda and take responsibility for the actions that will inshallah take place tonight. The teen only had access to a very basic phone, according to authorities, that could only text. Now, the WA Police Commissioner, Cole Blanche, said the attack has all the hallmarks of terrorism, but did not declare it a terrorist act. He believed the boy was working alone, not part of a broader terror cell. A parent at the boys' school claimed complaints being made to teachers and local politicians over concern the boy had tried to convert other students into practicing extreme Islam. Now, we have to remember that this is a Caucasian, which is a white boy. So, and he wasn't raised a Muslim, which a lot of people will be asking in this situation if he was raised as a normal, well, raised in a typical Australian white household, then is it something to do with the religion itself? Although we saw that Waleed Ali said, "Oh, that you shouldn't tarnish Islam as a whole, just like you shouldn't tarnish all men." Now, Perth, of course, was in the headlines last week because of that released illegal criminal released by the High Court after a High Court decision last year, and so the name of this grub, and we also have to say alleged criminal here. So Majid Jamshidi Dokarshkan, who was born in Kuwait. So he was one of three who took part in a violent home invasion against Nanette Simons and her husband Philip. They tied them up to steal $200 worth of jewelry and other valuables, but still bashed them anyway. This is the horrific photo of Nanette Simons. Now, the immigration minister, Andrew Giles, he was, well, good enough to contact Nanette Simons. I mean, he's been hiding most of the other time. Now, Ninette, she sounds like she's an Eastern European grandmother, and they're quite known for being, quite feisty, and telling people, with not mincing their words. The Net Simons was extremely polite with Andrew Giles, saying, "I just don't feel safe in my own home." Now, it has been revealed this week that Dushkan had faced court multiple times this year for a trespass and driving offences before the alleged attack. So Claire O'Neill said, I'm not going to get into the specifics of an individual case, but as a Commonwealth Minister, I can't do anything to change what state courts decide to do with regard to bail. Though the Commonwealth prosecutor, when it came to when he was before court for failing to comply with his visa conditions, breaking curfew, the Commonwealth prosecutor did not oppose bail. And so obviously there was that the curfew charge was withdrawn after it was revealed the government had tied the conditions to an invalid visa. And now after the emergency laws had been passed last year to put visa conditions on this 149 illegal criminal cohort, they set up the Community Protection Board, a panel of justice system experts set up by Labor to scrutinise visa conditions. Former Victoria Police Commissioner Graham Ashton, who was appointed by Dan Andrews, said he was not interested when speaking because they recommended that the ankle bracelet be taken off this alleged home invader. And so Anthony Albanese, by the end of the week, said the Community Protection Board made the wrong decision, but it's independent of government. No, it's not. It's not the judiciary because the minister has a delegate there, and the minister, can overrule the recommendations of the Community Protections Board. So it makes you think that the only conclusion that you can make is that they just don't care. Because remember, when the High Court decision was handed down last year, the response from the Albanese government, the ministers responsible, Claire O'Neill, Andrew Giles and Mark Dreyfus, was just to do nothing. It was only because there was mass community outrage, concern, and the opposition put pressure on them that this emergency legislation passed. And remember that Mark Dreyfus, the Attorney General, allowed the Human Rights Commission to lobby for these criminal detainees to be released during the High Court deliberation. And also remember what Mark Dreyfus said to reporter Olivia Casey last year when one of the first detainees to allegedly reoffend, sexually assault a woman in an Adelaide motel. This is what Mark Dreyfus snapped.
Do you owe an apology to those in the community that have been subjected to misdeeds by some of these individuals?
Olivia, the reason that these people have been released from immigration detention is because the High Court has made a decision that means it is illegal for us to continue to detain them.
I want to suggest to you that that question is an absurd question. You are asking a Cabinet Minister, 3 ministers of the Crown, to apologise for upholding the law of Australia, for acting in accordance with the law of Australia, for following the instructions of the High Court of Australia. I will not be apologising for upholding the law. I will not be apologising for pursuing the rule of law, and I will not be apologising for acting. Do not interrupt. I will not be apologising for acting. I will not be apologising for acting in accordance with a High Court decision. Your question is an absurd one.
Okay, I think we'll move on here. Yep.
That sounds like disrespect towards women from our male Attorney General. And Mark Dreyfus this Friday, he chaired a meeting of Commonwealth, state and territory police ministers talking about ways to bring down the domestic violence levels. Now, remember last week, Anthony Albanese, he refused to apologise to Sarah Williams, the organiser of what you were wearing. So remember, Anthony Albanese said that Katie and I wanted to speak today. We were told that wasn't possible, and then Sarah Williams said that's a flat out lie. And she decided to cry. Now, Anthony Albanese could have just apologized, but he just chose to deflect, saying that he wished Sarah well. It was very ScoMo-esque because he refused to apologize. And Anthony Albanese this week has dodged responsibility for his own community protection board, which he can overrule. Now, the Newcastle Herald. So Sarah Williams is from Newcastle. They did an expose on Sarah Williams. So, what you were wearing. Australia volunteers make allegations, bullying, forgery, lying. So it talks about one of their petitions that had more than 20,000 signatures for a state government petition demanding mandatory spiking and sexual violence training for security and bar staff. So their ex-volunteers allege that many of those signatures were flawed. And also it talks about that the organization is poorly managed, and that the money there is the money that is fundraised. Any charitable or organization is supposed to that raises more than $15,000 in a year must have an authority to fundraise from New South Wales fair trading. So it's going down here. It says that the ex-volunteers that estimate the organization raised at least 70,000 and believe that some of the money is held in Miss Williams' bank account. The Herald has seen numerous transferred from event ticket sales into a bank account in Miss Williams' name, totaling thousands of dollars. And one volunteer said, or ex-volunteer, on multiple occasions, I watched cash be handed over and it went into a personal wallet. And then there's talking of the risk of re-traumatization, because the volunteers who run the safe spaces at music festivals for people impacted by sexual assault or harassment, supposedly to include trauma informed counseling, reporting facilities and medical services. They're a little more than table with lollies and water, and they are just people trying their best with no qualifications, no medical training, no process to appropriately deal with disclosures of sexual violence. And then there's alleged bullying, a power imbalance and abusive tendencies by Sarah Williams. Volunteers described an alleged incident where a disagreement spun out of control that left 4 volunteers in left accommodation. They were sharing with Miss Williams and spent the night in a caravan park paid for their own pocket. She just kept yelling at me, someone I'd done so much for. Could speak to me the way she did. To this day, I'll never forgive her. I relapsed for the first time in 2 years, harming myself because of the way she spoke to me. Many felt scared to speak up to Miss Williams, so she could be highly reactive and emotional when presented with suggestions or criticism. Similar to most other spaces that she goes through, she kind of has that untouchable nature because of what she does. Other volunteers describe gossip, bullying in online chats. I was there seeing Sarah criticizing, putting everyone down. People would try and assist and help them. They would start taking their character, try to diminish their likability within the group. Another described Miss Williams' behavior as very manipulative. So I think that Sarah Williams' 15 minutes of fame is over. And so obviously the fact that, well, she was in the national headlines because the Prime Minister showed up at her Canberra rally, and the rest of the rallies around the nation had her branding as well. had her organisation's branding as well, I should say. Eric Shingles says, well, Labor have really gone digging for dirt on her. Well, certainly the Labor rusteds on as soon as she called their dear leader Albo a liar. Well, they have no time. The Labor rusted ons for women who attack their side of politics. Now, let's remember that they gave Bill Shorten, when he was Labor leader, a free pass when he was under investigation secretly by Victoria Police for an historical rape at a Labor youth camp. Now, his accuser, Kathy Sheriff, she's never changed her story, but remember how all the lefties and Labor hacks always called Christian Porter an accused rapist because of this mentally ill woman who later committed suicide, accused him of rape when he was a teenager at a debating contest. They continued to call Christian Porter an accused rapist, but they never called Bill Shorten an accused rapist. And Kathy Sheriff, she is very much alive and well. And then, of course, in the Victorian Parliament, you now have two ex-Labor MPs kicked out of the Parliamentary Labor Party, Will Fowles and now Darren Cheeseman. Darren Cheeseman is the latest, kicked out for inappropriate. We don't know what he's actually done, but apparently floating around is some inappropriate text messages, and Jacinta Allen has refused to list what they are. And now Will Fowles, you remember, Dan Andrews was the Premier when he kicked him out. He was accused of inappropriate behaviour towards a woman in Parliament House, that he was cleared by a Victoria Police investigation. So again, this is the thing, that Labor, they claim that they're the authentic voice for real women. You can't trust the Boys Club and the Liberal Party. They have less women MPs. We have equal number of men and women in our caucus and in our cabinet, but scratch beneath the surface there, and well, I mean, there's a lot of toxic men and women in the left Labor side of politics. And speaking of nasty leftists, Green Senator Maureen Faruqi. So her 18C Human Rights Commission complaint against Pauline Hanson. Remember, Maureen Faruqi decided to tweet after the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. Condolences to those who knew the Queen. This is my impersonation of Maureen Faruqi. I cannot mourn the leader of a racist empire who built on stolen lives, land, and wealth of colonized people. We are reminded of the urgency of the treaty with First Nations, justice, reparations for British colonies, and becoming a republic. And Pauline responded, your attitude appalls and disgusts me. When you immigrated to Australia, you took advantage of this country. You took citizenship, bought multiple homes and a job in Parliament. It's clear you're not happy, so pack your bags and piss off back to Pakistan. And when they got back into the Parliament, Pauline Hanson refused to apologise and doubled down and said, in fact, I'll drive you to the airport. Now, that comment was covered by parliamentary privilege. Now, Pauline Hanson has been saying this to people who display anti-Australian views for 25 years. If you don't like it here, go back to where you came from. I'll take you to the airport. I'll pay for your taxi fare there. And in a defense, Pauline Hanson, that it wasn't based on racism. Her defense is that in an interview with Darren Hinch in 2018, told him to go back to New Zealand because Darren Hinch was born in New Zealand. In fact, the whole dual citizenship saga was kicked off because there was somebody who was trying to prove that Darren Hinch was a dual citizen, yet it turned out all these other people were. Now, Darren Hinch, he just responded, "Oh, you're always telling that people Pauline Hanson," and he didn't complain to the Human Rights Commission. Now, Maureen Faruqi, she's talked about how it's so terrible to have to be in the same chamber as Pauline Hanson every day. Now, independent journalist Chris Coveries, Chris De Bruyne, who doesn't get the recognition or credit he deserves. He goes to a lot of these Sydney public events, such as he was at covered the riot outside the Wakeley Church following the stabbing of Bishop Mari Emmanuel. Now he at the federal court in, I think it's Sydney, decided to ask Maureen Faruqi, can people be racist against white people?
Senator, are all white people racist?
No comment.
That's not a no. That's not a no. Are all white people racist?
Now, moving back to Victoria, we have a former criminal detainee here who has, allegedly reoffended. Now, this Herald Sun article doesn't mention his name, but the Western Suburbs man is accused of threatening specialist police officers with a knife at the Nicholson Street establishment in Footscray after he was seen brandishing the weapon in a nearby grocery shop. No one was injured prior or during the arrest. The charge relates to an incident at the Albert Street grocery store in Footscray, where the man allegedly stole groceries and was reported to be carrying a knife at about 9 a.m. Victoria Police can confirm the man is one of the detainees released following a High Court ruling. And now a bail was opposed by the police. So he's been charged with resist police officer, assault police officer, possess dangerous article and license, and shop theft. But he was granted bail and will reappear on May the 22nd. So are we shocked that a lot of this criminal cohort are re-offending? And also there is, we've had those two knife fights at High Point Shopping Centre between rival gang members. High Point Shopping Centre in Maribyrnong in Melbourne's inner west has been known as Knife Point for many years. And then there was a man who was wielding a knife at Water Garden Shopping Centre in the outer west, which is sort of near St Albans and Sydenham. Luckily, no one was hurt, but there was a fatal stabbing, which there is a hunt for two Indian brothers who are alleged to be the people responsible. So the police have reached images of Abjeet, 26, and Robin Gartan, who are believed to be traveling in a stolen Toyota Camry. So one man, 30, from Noble Park, died at the scene. This was a stabbing in Ormond in the early hours of Sunday. And another 22 from the same suburb was taken to hospital with serious but life-threatening injuries. Two others fled the scene. Police believe the men were known to each other. Now, police are worried that they could try and flee back to India. Of course, there is there was that alleged murder of that Indian woman in Point Cook, allegedly by her husband, who then fled to India. And of course, even though the Indian authorities will cooperate in extradition, it will be an extremely slow process for justice. Eric says, can we get rid of the police service and just have a police force back? Well, only if it's a police force that actually goes after criminals, not thought criminals, word criminals. Dawn says, plan your move away from the cities where your incompatibilities are self-segregating. Now, when these knife crime incidents happen, I see that a lot of people say that Melbourne is Australia's most livable city because it always is ranked highly on the world livability rankings, and us living in Melbourne, like, how can that be? I mean, a lot of Melburnians are struggling to cope with the cost of everything. If they're renters, rent is going up, and then good luck getting a property. Though often these lists are compiled by groups who they survey like professionals who like work in different parts of the world. So Melbourne's a good city if you're rich, and this graph was quite interesting here. A lot of our mass migration is of millionaires. So in this graph here, the blue is millionaires entering and the red is millionaires leaving. And as you can see, the China and India have the greatest amount of millionaires leaving. 13,500 for China, India 6,500. A lot of millionaires are fleeing the UK, 3,200. Brazil minus 200. Mexico minus 700. We just had those two Australian brothers allegedly murdered in India by three criminals who were trying to rob them. And Australia is the number one destination for millionaires entering at 5,200. And Australia's foreign home ownership laws, so you can only buy an existing property if you're planning to work or study here, but foreigners can buy new properties and apartments. They can buy existing properties if they're planning to redevelop them. So in Melbourne, there's still towers going up in South Bank. They're building another huge tower that's going to be taller than the Eureka Tower in South Bank. So there's all these still tall towers going up. You can sort of guess who is buying them. And of course, Australia's other global city, Sydney, there is heaps of demand by foreign buyers, which of course is continuing to push up housing properties. This was from 7 News Sydney last night about the demand from foreign buyers, which is pushing up property prices locally.
While many Australians are struggling to get into the real estate market, new figures show thousands of homes worth billions have been snapped up by foreign buyers in the past 9 months. Local buyers say it's driving up prices.
For a 1970s red brick home in Epping,
we are here to sell it, you are here to buy it.
Some bidders were there, others competing from overseas.
Bid online from Singapore, actually, so an international bidder.
Setting the pace from afar.
5K on top online?
Yes, 2705.
A local still won out.
sold. Congratulations and well bought.
This time,
There's a lot of online bidding from Singapore, from Asia and other countries, so it's a tough market. So you're basically bidding people from all over the world.
overseas buyers snapping up 4,700 Australian homes in 9 months. Total value, $5.3 billion.
They're looking at Sydney as a safe market to park their money.
Mainly targeting high-end properties, often through buyer agents.
Typically, we've been working with a lot of buyers out of China and Hong Kong, but interestingly, over the last few months, we've had a lot of inquiry out of India.
The Chinese buyers taking almost 2,000 Australian homes, $2.5 billion. Hong Kong, Vietnam, Nepal and Taiwan, $300 million each. India and the UK, $200 million.
Definitely helps the owner to get an increased price at the end of the day, seeing those international bidders.
For the market, it's all eyes on the Reserve Bank, meeting again next week. The best bet, keeping interest rates steady for now. Persistent inflation pushing back hopes of a cut.
They'll hold them steady for longer, so we may not even see a movement from the RBA at all this year.
A jump in rates considered unlikely. Chris Marr, 7 News.
And now, Wolfish, I explained before I played this report that foreigners can buy new properties in Australia, that they are slugged extra taxes. So that's why the government, well, they like the revenue because, well, supposedly it's to, well, make sure that there's enough left over for Australians, but not all nations around, like a lot of nations around the world, ban foreigners from owning all property. So Australia, it does have very liberal foreign home ownership laws. Now, as this report says, there is an upcoming interest rate decision by the Reserve Bank tomorrow. Inflation for this quarter is still at 1%. The average is 3.6% over the past 12 months. So inflation, if inflation was to be 1% per quarter this year, then it'd be 4%. So inflation would actually be going up. So inflation is heading back up again, and 4.35% interest rate that the Reserve Bank has raised it to, that's very low by international standards. It doesn't seem to be doing the job. I mean, I'm in favor of jacking up interest rates quite significantly so we can have a crush inflation, which is absolutely insidious. Things are still going up. Like, can anyone afford to eat out or go out unless you're a single income, no kids, or a dink, dual income, no kids? I mean, families, like, they can hardly afford to do any sort of recreational things with their kids, trips to the zoo, bowling alley, to the circus, the carnival, all cost things as well. Then you've got like shoes that have all the other expenses that come with having children at all. We are becoming, it seems, Melbourne and Sydney, a tale of two cities. The millionaires, we seem to be getting on the road to get a millionaires here, and then everybody else. I mean, that is certainly how London is currently, though with the re-election of Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London, we might be getting a few more UK millionaires coming down under. Now, there was Sadiq Khan won, although there was a 5% swing to the Conservative candidate, Susan Hall. And so David Clues from Unity News Network, it wasn't, even though everyone voted on the Thursdays are election day in UK elections, the votes weren't counted until Saturday. And but there was a lot of people reporting on the Friday that Susan Hall would pull off an upset. Though David Clues reports that Tory hopes were built on analysing ballots as they were verified. It appears the overwhelming majority of completely safe postal voters went for Sadiq Khan, Express Post from Pakistan. And David Clues had Piers Corbyn on, the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, who believes that the London mayoral race was rigged. Of course, Piers Corbyn was a very vocal anti-lockdown activist. He's also a Save Cash activist. He did a stunt where he went to a cashless supermarket and paid with cash. Now, what they do in the UK, whether it's the local elections or general elections, is they do not get progressive results throughout the count. So you know how in our elections, the Electoral Commission gives a constant update. So with 1% of the vote counted, this is the state of the votes. They don't do that in the UK. The Electoral Commission, they all count the votes and then just declare the winner, the returning officer, at a town hall or local hall once everything's counted. So nobody knows what the total is until it's declared. And so nobody knew any votes for the mayor of London until the vote was declared on the Saturday. And Britain First candidate Nick Scanlon decided that he would, because they all have the candidates up on stage when the vote's announced, decided that he would give it to Khan when he went to make his victory speech.
Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Now, it was an absolute shellacking for the Conservatives overall in the local government elections. Now, not all of the local councils are up for election. So there's different councils that are up for election every year. But, and I'm just going by the Wikipedia results here. So despite there only being there was actually a 1% swing against Labor and the Conservatives, there was a net gain of councillors of 186 for Labor, and they gained control of 8 extra councils. The Conservatives lost 474 councillors and lost control of 10 councils. The Liberal Democrats won 104 council seats and won control of 2 councils. And one of the big winners was the Green Party, who won 74 council seats as well. And one of their candidates who won was Mohsin Ali, who won in Leeds. And he, in his victory, said it was for Palestine.
Palestine will be free! 3 years ago, we started this campaign. I started alone. And Allah sent his angels to come and assist me. So, for the community of Hales and Gibson, who are fed up of being let down by the Labour Council, who have been fed up of being taken for granted, who have been fed up of being taken for granted, who have been fed up of being neglected by this rotten council, who are fed up. Look at the language you use in back off. Don't use that as a win. Don't use that. Hales and Gibson is a win for the people of Gaza. who have been... We will not be silent. We will raise the voice of Gaza. We will raise the voice of Palestine. Allahu Akbar!
And now you remember that when George Galloway won the Rochdale by-election for the Workers' Party of Britain, he said, "Sakir Starmer, this is for Gaza." Now, the Workers' Party won 4 seats at the council elections, 2 in Rochdale. Now, that is double the amount that Reform UK got. They only got 2, and 1 was in the proportionally represented London Assembly. And Richard Tice, the Reform leader, he has friendly TV channels in GB News, where he's a presenter, Talk TV, and then there's also the sympathetic papers, the Times, the Telegraph, the Express. All of the media is against George Galloway and the Workers' Party of Britain. ITV, Good Morning Britain presenters tried to stitch him up over his meeting of Saddam, and claiming that he supports Hezbollah and Hamas, which he does not. Now, obviously Sakir Starmer and Labour and Labour supporters are very alarmed that the party in the lead up to the general election is hammering votes to the pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian left. And we saw that the Greens there, one of their candidates there. Now, the Greens, of course, they have this coalition which is going to clash eventually. I mean, they support all of the rainbow woke agenda, yet they have also got these Islamists who are now getting elected for them, who, because of their foreign policy, though George Galloway, he is certainly not woke and believes in 2 genders. And I noticed that, Owen Jones, the Labour stooge, he said that, yes, no leftist should support George Galloway because of this statement that he made, that he didn't want his children taught about gay relationships because they're not normal.
So what specifically do you not like that's taught to children in schools?
Well, I don't want my children prematurely sexualized at all. I don't want them taught that some things are normal when their parents don't believe that they're normal. Now, there's lots of things not normal. Doesn't mean you have to hate something that isn't normal. But if my children are taught that there's whatever the current Vogue number is, 76 or 97 or whatever the number of purported genders that exist, I don't want my children taught that.
But are they taught that?
Some of them are, yeah.
Are they? Because there's a huge gap here between saying, I think kids should be going to school and taught that, not all relationships look like a heteronormative couple, male, female. There's a huge gap between saying they should know that there's lots of LGBT people in the world is very diverse, that's what it looks like, and you're saying 96 genders. There's a big gap in between, isn't there?
Well, no, 3 of my children go to school, a Catholic school in Scotland, so they have some protections for the moment, although the SNP government's threatening to remove some of those protections. But my other 2 school children are taught in England things that I don't want them to be taught, and at an age I don't want to be taught. That relations, that gay relationships are exactly the same and as normal as a mum, a dad, and kids. I believe I want my children to be taught that the normal thing in Britain, in society across the world, is a mother, a father, and a family. I want them to be taught that there are gay people in the world and that they must be treated with respect and affection as I treat my own gay friends and colleagues with respect and affection. But I don't want my children to be taught that these things are equal, because I don't believe them to be equal. Apart from anything else, the human race would no longer exist. If it was normal, then it would be the end of humanity over a couple of generations.
Yeah, she can't say the N-word anymore when it comes to discussing LGBT issues. The N-word, normal, say that, well, normal is heterosexual family. You're not allowed to, well, not allowed to use that word anymore. Now, of course, George Galloway, his main platform is his a radio call-in show, and also his Twitter X account. He is his own is his own media machine and has been for 30 plus years. Now, will he and the Green Party and other independents be able to eat away at Labor's vote when it comes to the general election? The only question now is, will Sir Keir Starmer will become Prime Minister by the end of the year, but will it be a Labor majority? That is the question. George Galloway recruited former English spin bowler Monty Panesar as a Workers' Party candidate, who is a Sikh. He wears a turban. He had a disastrous interview where he got the EU and NATO confused. Now, the Conservatives, they are not going to dump Rishi Sunak. Remember, they decided to backstab Boris Johnson, bring him down to install Rishi Sunak when the members voted for Liz Truss, undermined, backstabbed her, and then they got Rishi Sunak unelected by the people and unelected by the Conservative Party members. They're not going to ditch him. They're just going to follow him off a cliff. They're consigned, well, we'll just let Rishi drive us off the electoral cliff. On the night of the local council elections, Labor won the Blackpool South by-election from the Conservatives. Scott Benson, who was a Conservative MP, resigned, fell for a bribery sting by Undercover Times journalists, and also the Conservatives lost the West Midlands mayoralty, even though the Birmingham City Council went bankrupt under Labor management. So yes, UK is, well, certainly I believe that the Conservatives need to be turfed out so they can go and sort themselves out. Though I think that all of us probably wish that at least Sadiq Khan had been turfed out, because that means, well, there's going to be continued knife crime. A 14-year-old was stabbed to death by a machete-wielding maniac. The Metropolitan Police are still going to persecute patriots who gather for St. George's Day or for a Armistice Day, and their persecution of Tommy Robinson, trying to ban him from the Capitol, fell through. That was overturned. Tommy Robinson won in court. Now, going over to the United States, where at Columbia University, where the liberated zones were first established by, well, some Columbia students. There were definitely many outside agitators, and so they wanted the university to divest from all Israel, anything to do with Israel. And now it escalated the past week when the students took over a hall. Now, although some people in this audience and in the dissident right might agree with their cause, these students, they are still deranged leftists. I mean, this is the pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza activism. It's just the latest cause for them. I mean, when previously it's been, remember, 2020 and 2016, Black Lives Matter. This is sort of a lame spin-off, and the Trans Tifa, the Extinction Rebellion. And so this, the Columbia students who took over this hall barricaded themselves in. They took their cosplaying as Gazans to the next level, demanding that the university administrators were obliged to bring them food.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building, now would you please bring us food and water?
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food?
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it
but
violently.
They haven't stopped it yet.
I don't know to what extent it has been attempted, but we're looking for a commitment.
Even though they illegally occupied a building and barricaded themselves in, the university should, even though we did this to ourselves, the university should all bring us essential supplies like Israel does to Gaza. Though down at the New York University, and proof that students don't know what they're protesting for. This was one of the exchanges with one of the couple of NYU protesters.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support. So I came down. I heard there's lots of cops. Some people were saying it was getting dangerous.
So even, I'm not sure if she's a university student, but she says, I wish I was more educated. So she said that she came down from Columbia to go to NYU. So she could very well be one of those outside agitators. Now, in the background of that Columbia student demanding the university bring them food and water, did anyone notice the guy behind her wearing the crop top? I mean, this is the thing. I mean, radical Islamists, they do not approve of homosexuality or effeminate men. I mean, and this was, I think, this photo was snapped on a New York subway. So the tea towel Khalif and the rainbow bag there. And over at the University of Sydney, because of course the leftists here, whether it be BLM, Extinction Rebellion, Transtifa, always import it here. I mean, look at these University of Sydney pro-Palestine students. I mean, they I mean, you know, the radical Islamists, like, you know, they are menacing, but, you know, your typical uni student who's just on the fashionable cause. I mean, just look at the patheticness there. Now, the NYPD in New York, they arrested and emptied the occupied hall and also decamped the tents that had been set up. That also happened with the LAPD at the University of California, Los Angeles. And obviously, and now Charlie Kirk, I played footage of him last week. Who he's pro Israel, he's a Christian Zionist. Said this anti-white activism has been going on for 9 years. Yet as soon as it's about it's anti-Israel, and some of them have said that they're openly pro Hamas. I mean, there's some who have just come out and said that. Charlie Kirk has said, why now? And obviously it's because, well, a lot of the donors to these universities are Jewish. They were fine for the last 9 years, but now they want it all shut down. And Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer for O.J. Simpson, Jeffrey Epstein, and Harvey Weinstein, he went on Newsmax, and well, he's planning a new organization to sue and bankrupt all of these pro-Palestinian activists.
We are going to be engaging in massive defensive and offensive lawfare against bigots, anti-Semites, and potential violent terrorists. We're going to take many, many kinds of legal actions. We're starting a group called Heard a Jew, We Sue You, in which if you send us the name of a Jewish kid, it could be a Christian Zionist too, who was hurt by one of these bigots, we will sue them, and we will get their dorm rooms taken away, and we will take their cars and their boom boxes, and we'll bankrupt them. We will do whatever is necessary under the law in order to bring these lawsuits, bring them successfully, and deter October 7th. Remember, there are people out there who have promised they will bring 10,000 October 7th. That's genocide. 10,000 October 7th is the end of the Jewish people. That's genocide. That's Hitler.
And now the US House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who is a Christian Zionist, he claimed that there's a lot of outside money that was coming in to fund these students. It's because they all had the same green tents. So this is, I think he was he on Newsmax, or when I think he was on the other one, News Nation.
What's happened at the campus, the escalation, the violence, the necessity of the NYPD coming in to break it all up, never had to happen. We need administrators to step up, university officials to step up and do their job. The most basic function that they have is the safety and security of their students.
Too far at this point for the FBI to look into this, or not necessarily?
No, I wouldn't say. I think the FBI needs to be all over this. I think they need to look at the root causes and find out if some of this was funded by, I don't know, George Soros or overseas entities. There's a sort of a common theme and a common strategy that seems to be pursued on many of these campuses. I noticed myself, and many of us did, while we were on site at Columbia University, the tents at their little encampment there, many of them matched. They were same color, make, and model. Did somebody purchase that and send it in? It looks pretty orchestrated to me.
You sound like a conspiracy theorist there, Mike Johnson. Now, the House that he leads passed HR 6090, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. And so this adds to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. So it adds discrimination against Jews may give rise to a violation of that title when discrimination is based on race, color, or national origin. And so this it has to pass the Senate. So this uses the definition of anti-Semitism that by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So it uses an outside organization's definition of anti-Semitism. So their working definition of anti-Semitism is calling for the aiding or justifying the killing of harming of Jews in the name of radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. I think we'd all agree that that is anti-Semitism, violent anti-Semitism. The second one, making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, such as, especially not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other institutions. So all of those graphs that I see circulating around that say these people who own these media companies are Jewish, or these people who are head of these government departments are Jewish. That's anti-Semitism. Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or for even acts committed by non-Jews. Denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, e.g. gas chambers, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of the National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II, the Holocaust, accusing Jews as a people or Israel of a state or of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust, accusing Israeli citizens being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. Then, is it anti-Semitic to say that, well, a Jew such as Avi Yemeni has dual loyalties? He calls himself an Ozraeli, which is Australian Israeli. He self-confessed by calling him that, has dual loyalties. So so it's anti-Semitic to even though Avi Yemeni in his title says that he has dual loyalties, it's apparently anti-Semitic to actually point out what he describes himself as. Denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination, claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor, even though it's an ethno-state. I mean, there are Arab Israelis, but it is designed as a homeland for Jewish people. All Jews worldwide are guaranteed Israeli citizenship, applying double standards by requiring Israel of behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation, using the symbols and images associated with classical anti-Semitism, e.g. claims of the Jews killing Jesus or blood libel to characterize Israel or Israelis. So that means that several Bible passages are now anti-Semitic, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. So you can't play. So that is, if you claim that the Israeli government is attempting to genocide the Gazans Palestinians, that's anti-Semitic. Holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel, and so it says here, anti-Semitic acts are criminal when they are defined so by law. Criminal acts are anti-Semitic when targets of attack, whether people or property. Anti-Semitic discrimination is denial of Jews or opportunity to service available to others and is illegal in many countries. Obviously, these pro-Palestinian university students, if they're blocking Jewish students going to class, then that is clearly discrimination. That should not be they are students or outside people who are doing that, they are clearly clearly aggressing against people. But passing passing this law, the US Congress, is clearly a violation of the First Amendment, although it has to be. And Matt Walsh has said that this is the most one of the most ridiculous laws ever passed. Even Michael Knowles at the Daily Wire also backed him up on there. So that sort of isolates Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Borang, and the debate between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens on the definition of anti-Semitism, because this working definition can be updated. So Daily Wire has put a gag order on Candace Owens, so the debate is not going to happen, because apparently Candace, when she was debating the back and forth between Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Borang, organizing the debate. Yes, Linda, I can see you there. So they have both. They have got a gag order from a private secret arbitration. So this is what Glenn Greenwald over at his locals. So when seeking the gag order, Daily Wire accused her of violating the non-disparagement clause of the company. The company cited Owens' initial tweet requesting a debate with Shapiro as proof of the disparagement. So Owens confirmed to Glenn Greenwald that she can't say anything. Jeremy Borang said, "Your story is inaccurate to the point of it being false. For that reason, we are trying to resolve our issues with Candace privately." That's what private arbitration is. Tom Bolo said, even though Biden's speech into speed claims of hate speech and condemnation of violent actions attempt to conflate them in people's minds. Now, I wonder if this definition of anti-Semitism will be updated to include October 7 denialism. Now, Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, recently made a speech discussing the reported atrocities of the Hamas attack on southern Israel on October 7.
Denied the horrific facts of September 11, 2001, the attacks on the United States that happened right here in New York City, and they've attempted to excuse or to ignore the barbaric attack of Hamas in Israel on October 7th, 2023, where Israeli women and children were savagely raped and murdered, and infants were cooked in ovens. Crowds of radical activists have chanted death to America and on our own streets in this country, and sub-public officials have refused to condemn them. Others,
though, according to a confirmed outside agitator at Columbia University, actress Susan Sarandon, the beheaded babies and rapes on October 7 never happened. This was when Susan Sarandon was confronted by pro-Israel activist Karen Pecker.
The singer and songwriter of the hit song Ceasefire Now. Do you know that Hamas rejected every ceasefire deal since October 7?
Do you know why?
Why?
Because they're terrible people.
Their organization
is not.
Wait.
We are Hamas! Yes, we're all Hamas!
Not know that all of those myths about babies and ovens and the rapes have all been denied.
I'm sorry.
You are not up to speed.
You're denying the terror actions that have been made in October 7 to so many innocent civilians.
About the 35,000 people
according
that
to
have
who?
been killed.
According to who?
We have an appointment. We have to.
I'm sorry that you're supporting a terror organization. They're coming for you next, Susan. Educate yourself. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Now, even though Susan Sarandon got dropped by United Talent Agency and dropped from a film because of her pro-Palestinian activism at the end of last year, it doesn't seem to have deterred her there. And in fact, she has she could lose more. Well, she's still getting work, but she because there was the Scream actress who got dropped from the seventh movie. I don't know if to work again in Hollywood, though. Susan Sarandon, she's 77 years old. I mean, maybe she just doesn't care anymore. She looks pretty good for 77 years old. You wouldn't think that that's a 77-year-old woman there. But maybe she just doesn't care anymore. But she may have to do, if she still wants to work, a Marlon Brando. He had to apologize to the Jews in Hollywood for accusing them of running Hollywood. If you can follow that, so he said that the Jews run Hollywood. Then he had to apologize to the Jews so he could work again in Hollywood. If you can follow that there. But yes, Susan Sarandon, she's a lifelong communist. She jumps on every type of bandwagon there. But the thing about these, they're just student brats. The thing about they claim that they're bringing attention to the war in Gaza, but they've made it all about themselves. I mean, cosplaying Gaza. There's hardly been any reporting on the state of the Israel-Hamas war, where Israel's now planning an invasion of Rafah. They're telling Gazans to move from Rafah, which I think Hamas will be saying, thanks for the tip. I mean, Israel's been saying that Netanyahu has said he's going to be invading Rafah for weeks now, and so it wouldn't Hamas. Given that they use civilians as human shields, wouldn't Hamas have already vacated? Like, you've given them like a month's notice. And Netanyahu, he has also shut down Al Jazeera, which is funded by the Qatari government, banned them from reporting in Israel. Now, Qatar is harboring many Hamas members and is one of the mediators in negotiations for Hamas. What this means is that in practice is that the Israeli government is going to seize Al Jazeera's broadcasting equipment used to deliver the channel's content, including editing and routing equipment, cameras, microphones, servers, and laptops, as well as wireless transmission equipment and some mobile phones. And this includes in the occupied East Jerusalem, which is supposed to be part of Palestinian lands run by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Though it must be said that Qatar, even though they're the ones harboring Hamas figures, they get off scot-free when it compares to Iran. I mean, they get to hold the FIFA World Cup, the AFC Asian Cup, while Iran they're not sanctioned, Qatar, yet Iran is constantly sanctioned. So that brings us towards the end of tonight. Now, I will be back with a special Wilms Front this Friday evening at 7 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilms Front channel. My guest will be Nick Patterson, who has just had a sensational victory against Victoria Police, who charged him with assaulting them when they charged at his friend Jason Reeve, an anti-lockdown protest on May 29, 2021. So almost 3 years ago. So at a pre-trial hearing, County Court Judge Liz Gaynor ruled that the VicPol body cam footage and statements are invisible at trial. This sees basically the case against Nick collapse. Now he's planning to sue Victoria Police. So a lot of people said that you can't take on Victoria Police and win. He did. And so it's certainly a lot of us who have, I believe that the system is set up so that Victoria Police, the DPP, always win. Nick has, well, he's given us all hope that there can be some justice in Victoria. Now, I will also have another Wilms front on Sunday evening at the normal time of 9 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilms front channels. This is how I sort of go. Like, I don't go for a while without Wilms fronts, and then bam, bam, two in a row. So my guest will be Adnan Belushi. So he is setting up a satirical website, The Gospel Trope, fake news that could be real, and then not the gospel trope, news that should be satire. So he's got his own podcast there, Belushi Podcast. So there's a lot of based people in New Zealand. And speaking of New Zealand, the good news is I'll be back on Reality Check Radio, my regular Tuesday breakfast slot with Paul Brennan. So it was off air for several weeks while they secured long-term financing, and they managed to raise $500,000, which is just incredible, from ordinary donors and some super donors. And so New Zealand's only a country of 5 million people. So to get 500,000, I mean, that's sort of Rebel News type fundraising, which is a multi-country operation. So I'll be looking forward to getting back on Reality Check Radio, and also chatting to another Kiwi in Adnan Belushi next Sunday evening. So it is full steam ahead for Wilms Front interviews, Unshackled Productions, and back on Reality Check Radio. So I've gone well over time now. So I'll see you again on Friday. Remember to give this video a like, comment, thumbs up, and remember, I could certainly do with $500,000 as well in donations, but every little bit helps from all of you viewers and readers. So bronze $5 per month, silver $10 per month, gold $25 per month, and platinum $50 per month. I'll put the link into the live chat, and you can also subscribe at the Unshackled Substack as well. So the Unshackled Substacks.subscribe, so you can do $5 per month, $50 per year, a foundation membership, $500 per year. In the meantime, stay safe, stay free, stay informed, stay uncensored. Good night, everybody. It's very late now, so I'll let you all get to sleep. Thank you for hanging around, and I'll see you at the earlier time on Friday, 7 p.m. Melbourne time, with Nick Patterson. Good night, everybody.
Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News